Hello, Cornerstone. Welcome to our online service. We're Vicki and Wilson, and we're glad you joined us today.
We miss seeing our Cornerstone family, including the children that smile and wave to us. Stay strong, stay well, stay faithful.
Hi Cornerstone, it's Aubrey here, and I just wanted to say I miss you all, and especially my kids. I really miss doing kids' church with you every Sunday. But I hope that you are spending good time as a family and getting to connect with each other and connect with God in new and different ways in this new and different time. And I can't wait until we can all come back together and see each other again, although I know that right now we are gathering together just in a different virtual way. Bye, everybody.
Hey, Cornerstone. I hope your time at home has been as chill as the Caressel house. We miss you.
Good morning, Cornerstone family. It's so good to see those faces and those smiles and hear your greetings. And Tim and Lindsay, I can totally relate. My name's Megan Huntoon. I'm one of the pastors here. Today we are going to be worshiping together. Brian is going to kick off our new series, Connect to What Matters, where he's going to actually be interviewing Jean and Aaron. And then we'll be coming back out here so I can share some announcements with you and some updates happening within our community. And now let's go into the auditorium and worship together.
Never said it would be easy, just promise you never leave. No moment ever wasted, use it all to set me free. I'm caught up in the wonder of your mastery. I'm bowing humbly for your majesty. I'm dabbing in the rivers of grace, wild and free. Good morning, Cornerstone. As we gather together all over the place, once again, we raise our hands of expectation to say, today, God, we expect to encounter you. We raise our hands of surrender to say, God, not my will, but And as I was preparing, and as we were playing in this room here at Cornerstone, many people have commented, what's it like to play to an empty room? And I really felt like the Lord was saying to me, you're not playing to an empty room anymore, because you're gonna fill it with my praise. And as you fill the room with my praise, I will fill it with my presence. And so I bless you wherever you are, that the room that you're in, with the people you are with, that room may be filled with the praise of God, and that room may be filled with the presence of God.
king of my heart. Be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the king of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. You are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, and you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good.
In the season, let us remember you're never gonna let us down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You are
Good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good.
'cause you're never gonna let your You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down.
You are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good.
Well, I sought the Lord and He answered me, and He delivered me from all my fears.
You are good.
Those that look to Him are radiant, and their faces shall never be ashamed. Well, this poor man cried, and the Lord heard him, and He saved him out of all of his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear Him, and He delivers them. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good, and blessed is he who takes refuge in Him. Oh, fear the Lord, all you saints, for those who fear Him, well, they never have any lack. Yes, you are now. Yes, you are now. You are good. Yes, you are now. You are good.
It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. This is how I fight my battles. 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 This is how
It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. This is how I fight my battles.
This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I
Elise, just keep singing that.
fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I
I've had conversations with people this week. And as we've been in this situation and under this circumstances now for over a month, there are many that have been impacted financially, in their jobs, in their health. But there's also many that have been impacted just in the emotional toll that this takes. Parents that are at home with their kids. People that are trying to work from home. People that are unsure of the future. And this is what I want to do right here, right now. As Elise is singing this song, I pray that you begin to move your eyes away from the crisis around us. And you lift your eyes from the crisis and you fix your eyes on the risen Christ. That we look to the one who is faithful and we look to him. And for a moment, let there be peace and confidence and hope as we turn from crisis to the true Christ, Jesus. And so I bless you in his name. I bless peace to your heart and to your mind, to your home. That the Lord may give you perseverance and patience and surprising joy and hope. It may look like, it may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. As we move into the time when Brian's going to share with us and call us as a church to what matters, I bless you in the name of Jesus, our Messiah. May you taste and see that he is good. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Good morning, Cornerstone. I'm here in our building. It's an empty room, but we're certainly aware of God's presence here. But I know your living room is not empty, and I'm glad to be with you this morning. And we think we have a great message and a great new series to start. I want to recognize that people are continuing to deal with disappointment. And this week we had to share some difficult news with our middle school and high school students that camp for this summer has been canceled. And just want you to know that we are grieving that loss with you, and there's many losses. One of the things that we're doing in the Carlucci house as we kind of deal with all of these different things, disappointments that mount up, is we're trying to find some humor and have as much fun as we can together. And so Elise and I were having fun this week reading some Instagram posts about some humor coming out of the coronavirus. And this is not meant to make light of people's struggle, but humor is a helpful tool right now. And so I wanted to read a few of these. This is from a high school girl. She posted, "Me and my dad are sharing the dining room table working from home. He's an aerospace engineer on a conference call right now, ordering fuselage prototypes, and I'm busy drawing a duck." And so that one's not that good, but here's a better one. "Eventually, everyone will be quarantined in their houses with no sports to watch, and in 9 months from now, there'll be a boom of babies. And we will call them all coronials." Now, some of you might think that's funny, coronials. I actually think that is a terrifying thought. There's no more room for another single person in my home right now. But Elise thought it was funny. But this one's my favorite, so true for me. "Quarantine has me realizing why my dog gets so excited." And then it lists the 3 things dogs get excited about. They're excited about this. They see something moving outside. They're excited to go on walks and excited to go on car rides. And isn't that what our excitement is reduced to right now? Elise is a teacher in the morning, and then she walks her husband in the afternoon, and that's what our days are made up of. Well, as I mentioned, we're starting a new series today called Connect to What Matters. And this series comes from a phrase that we've been using as a community for a couple years now. And a lot of people might look at that and say this is a phrase of vision and mission. And it really isn't for us. Our elements kind of speak to those things more. This phrase is meant to be an invitation. It's meant to be the front door to our community, an invitation to what we're doing here, what we think God is doing in our lives. And we like the idea of an invitation and that phrase being thought of that way because what we're inviting people into is a family and a community. And we're always wanting to share the life that God is creating here at Cornerstone with others. And so invitation is a great way to describe connect to what matters. Now there's 2 main words within that phrase that I want to talk about today. And in the weeks to come, we're going to go through each of these 4, but I want to focus on 2 words that are in the phrase today. The first is connect, and I'll do this part briefly. We absolutely believe that there are certain things that every person that's ever lived and is alive today needs. We don't apologize for that. We don't come at that from an arrogant view, but we certainly believe that there are certain connections that people need that every person absolutely needs. And, I think people right now are really, really aware of their need for community as we've been isolated from one another. It's ironic that one of the things that kept people from connecting just 2 months ago was how busy they are. Now people have lots of time, but what's keeping them from connecting is their proximity. So we're aware of that. That's one of those, connecting to other people. But connection is a really important thing. And I'd encourage you to explore some of these connections on our website. Our homepage has some really great new information. You can go to each of these 4, Life with God, Life Together, Life of Wholeness, Life on Mission, and you can find a number of books to read on this subject, podcasts, messages to listen to. You can fill your day with just great ideas and thinking about these connections that really matter. But we're meant to connect to certain things. Jeremiah chapter 32, verse 19, he was trying to describe the importance of connecting to these things. He says, of God, great are your purposes and mighty are your deeds. And then Isaiah chapter 46, verse 10, the Lord is speaking of these. He knows that this is true. I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times, what is still to come. And I say, my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. So there are absolutely certain connections that every person needs to make. But I want to spend most of our time today talking about what matters. How does a person determine what matters? It's a big question. Who has the right to say these are the things that you should build your life on, and who has the best advice? Does anyone have a right to say that? Is there something that matters more than other things? Is that statement that I shared earlier that we absolutely believe there are certain connections every person needs? Is that true? So I think one of the things that's happening for people right now is they're kind of reevaluating their life. We've been talking about this the last few weeks. Becoming really aware of things they thought were important that maybe aren't as important anymore, and things that they neglected, they're now identifying as these are really important things in my life. So what matters? It's a huge question. What matters in life? This quote from Francis Chan stood out to me this week. He said, "Our greatest fear should not be that we will fail, but of succeeding at things in life that don't really matter." We just finished a week remembering some meaningful moments. Two saving stories that are meant to go together, the Passover story and the Exodus, and then the story of the crucifixion and the resurrection. Both of those stories are salvation stories. Salvation would come through the death of a spotless lamb. The first story, a lamb is killed and Israel is delivered. They experience a baptism and a resurrection as they come out of the sea. With Jesus, there's a salvation from a foreign enemy of sin and death. We experience a resurrection and a baptism with him. Now, what happens after both of those stories is God goes out of his way to reveal those things that matter. So those things that are meaningful. Or you can think of it this way, those things that have lasting meaning, or if you want to make it really personal, those things that actually matter to you. So it gets back to that question, who determines this? Well, God went out of his way to reveal those things that matter. And as he was doing this, he was creating something new, a new race of people, new creation, new identity, new life. All of these things would be forged around a group of people saying, what matters to God will also matter to me. So Exodus 19 is a dramatic example of this happening. Israel's just been rescued. They come out of the sea. It's a few weeks later, and God takes them to the mountain. And here, an invitation again is being extended that people might make what matters to God important to them. Verse 2, Israel camped in the desert in front of the mountain. Then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the descendants of Jacob, and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did in Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all the nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. And these are the words you're to speak to the Israelites." Now, if you read the Jewish sages and their commentary on this passage, one of the things that they all want to point out really quickly is it's not just a few people that this message is going to, it's all the people. And it's all the people receiving an invitation. And we know that because if you continue to read on and you get to verse 8, the people actually responded to God's kind of invitation this way. The people responded together, "We will do everything that the Lord has said." See, God doesn't force himself in any way. He's not trying to say, "You should believe me because I said so," but he's inviting people in. Now, what's beautiful about this is that there's a choice. Will I make what matters to me the same thing that matters to God? Jonathan Sacks, who's a rabbi in England, he said that this is an idea before its time, a free God wanting free worship of free people. Now let me tell you how modern people interact with this story a little bit, because we have conflicting ways of looking at it. A lot of people really love that this story is full of inclusion and equity. Everyone is invited in, men and women and children and foreigners and future foreigners and aliens. They're all invited in. So modern people love the inclusion, the equity. It's beautiful, given a choice. But here's what modern people have a hard time with in the story. This word covenant is used. Covenant is a type of relationship that is thought of by God, initiated by God, has a certain purpose, promise, and responsibility. But the thing about covenants that modern people have a hard time with is God defines the terms. We don't get to. So although we might love the equity and the inclusion of the story, people have a hard time saying, "God, why do you get to determine the terms of the relationship?" But that's exactly what's happening. But it's a choice. And so today people have the same choice. Will we move in this way that we will experiment, we will see if the things that matter to God can actually be meaningful and matter to me. So Israel says yes. You can continue reading on. You get to Exodus chapter 19 or chapter 20, and you see God revealing the 10 Commandments, something that we just look over today, we take for granted. But I'll tell you this, there was a time that honesty wasn't as valued as it is today. There was a time that personal property wasn't valued. See, God was revealing and he was connecting his people to meaningful things. So what happened at Sinai? Well, God gives them this thing called the Torah. And there's a number of commands in there. They're instructions to life. But the way we like to describe it here at Cornerstone is he was connecting them to meaningful things, things that matter. A life with God, a life together, a life of wholeness, and a life on mission. Now, years later, God would extend the invitation to connect to these things in a greater way to all people through Jesus. And so we just celebrated that story. We mentioned it a moment ago. Jesus' death on the cross makes a way for us. He rose from the grave. He makes a way for us. He knows the way through every grave. But Jesus is also creating something new. New humanity, new people. You get to 1 Peter chapter 2, you have what a lot of the New Testament writers are trying to do. They're trying to help people see that God's forming something new around these new ideas. What matters to God can matter to you. So in this passage, 1 Peter chapter 2, the language from Exodus is borrowed here. You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare his praises of him who called you out of darkness and into his wonderful light. That phrase, wonderful light, is now what's used to describe meaningful things that lead to life. So saying all that, and even recognizing that as a preacher, I believe that the Bible is a tremendous resource. It's the best resource for figuring out how to live your life and what to build your life on. I know that this is the rub for a lot of people. How can I believe the Bible? How can I believe a preacher? How can I believe what a certain church is saying? Because so many of us, and I'm in this boat too, we are so tired of all these dogmatic agendas being put on us all the time. And so maybe you've experienced that from another church, or you felt that way from a certain religion, or maybe it's a family tradition. Right now, all of us are experiencing the dogmatism that's coming from both political parties. What do they keep saying? These are the things that should matter. Here's the agenda that matters. So a lot of us are just tired of all that. But the invitation still exists. And it's really important for us to wrestle with this idea. How do I determine what matters to me? And can I let what matters to God matter to me? So let me describe the wrestling this way and why it's really important. So I want to describe something I've done, shared here before at Cornerstone. It's a theory of development, of the way people mature and progress through life, but I certainly think this is true of faith. I first heard this from one of our professors, Dave Oakley, as he's describing like educational development, but it's the same kind of concept that you see everywhere when describing maturity and development. So think of it as we talk about connecting to what matters. Think of it as a way to see what's happening in the world today. So 3 phases, okay? So the first phase, it's really easy to describe. It's the black and white phase, the phase of absolutes and concretes. This is when our kids are little and we teach them about what's right and wrong. We teach them about what's safe and not safe. And our kids just see the world that way. And so if they ever see an argument or they see a debate on TV, their questions are, who's right, who's wrong, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy? And as parents, we might say, well, it's not quite so easy. But that's how kids see things. And that's an absolutely necessary part of a person's development, is this concrete, absolute static phase of life. But that's a very immature phase. So that progresses. And out of that phase becomes the relativistic phase, where people begin to ask questions. And they begin to deconstruct all of those old frameworks that they were given, most of the time by their family and their tradition. So adolescence is a perfect example of this. It's absolutely necessary for our kids to question and at times rebel and even deconstruct things. Now here's what I see happening in our culture today, and many people are writing about it. We have a culture that's stalled in its development because we have many people vacillating back and forth between the black and white absolute phase and also the relativistic phase, and never moving on to the third one, which I'll describe in a moment. But let me give you 2 examples of that. So just think about what's happening today in the world with politics. People are really connecting to this. They think this is where meaning happens. You know you've reverted back to that black and white absolute phase when you are constantly defending someone you voted for, or you never see something good in someone you didn't vote for. It's certainly true that a person's not all good or all bad. And when we revert back to that phase, we kind of, we're not able to nuance and see what things are doing. So that's an example of that. We go back and forth. But an example of us just kind of being stalled in this relativistic phase is it's really popular today to deconstruct your life. And here at Cornerstone, we actually think this is a really important part of faith, deconstructing your faith. But it's celebrated to the point that people just continue to question everything and deconstruct everything. And one of the things we want to encourage young people as they're deconstructing is that it's really important that you rebuild something in its place that's more beautiful and true and loving. But we have people that are stalled, and it's keeping them from going to this third phase. So psychologists call this third phase critical commitments. And I love the way it's described. Commitments that are important. So eventually, as people mature, they attach themselves to certain things, certain relationships, a career, virtue, values. This is where people begin to say things like, this is the kind of person I want to be. This is the way I want my life to go. And even though you might have questions because you've moved out of the absolute phase, you might have more questions. That's part of being wise. You know that there's no, it's not a healthy way of living. It's not a resilient type of life to just continue to question everything. And so you begin to say, this is what I'm going to be about. Okay, so how does that fit into these 4 things that we want to present to you during the series? Life with God, life with others, life of wholeness, life of mission. I don't think God says you need to adopt these things in your life because he said so. It's an invitation. And whenever you see an invitation in the Bible, whether it's from God in the Old Testament or Jesus in the New Testament, there's always this opportunity to taste and see. So Jesus said, come and see. Jesus asked, what are you looking for? The psalmist in Psalm 34 says, taste and see that the Lord is good. In other words, try it out. Psalm 103, I was reading this to my boys this week, and it stood out to me. He satisfies your desires with good things. Let's see if that's true. And so what you can do is God is giving you an invitation to see if these things actually might be the things that matter, that life can be built on. And I think this is exactly what the world needs today. One of the things I see happening with our church and in the world is that we're beginning to shift the way we interact with people. We're beginning to shift the way we think of ministry. In the past, and I'll close with this. In the past, we were trained that it's the job of a pastor in a church to be as relevant and as cool and as familiar as we can be to our culture. That when people show up, they experience things they see in pop culture, and that we lower the bar as much as we can. And, you know, there was a time for that, and it accomplished something. That phase was then replaced with just the opposite, where we were deconstructing gathering in a building. We were deconstructing our tradition. Ironically, these are things people are missing today. They're missing the together and the tradition. But they're saying, let's deconstruct all of those things to make it easier to send people out. So it's the missional movement. Send, go, go. Go into your neighborhood, go into your workplace. And that's beautiful, and there's a time for that. But here's where we are today. The world is creating hungry people. The discontent in life, the external factors, and this was happening before the coronavirus. The political discontent, the way people were just struggling to deal with the normal anxieties of life, all of those dogmatic things that were on them that was stressing them out, their past trauma. It was creating a bunch of people, a whole culture, all of us, who were discontent and disillusioned with life. You know what that, another way you can describe that? You can describe that as hunger. Hunger for something different, hunger for something better. And now you have what we're going through now. And it's just accentuating that hunger. Here's the job of a church today. It's our job to connect people's hunger with a great, big, loving God who invites them into things that matter. And so here at Cornerstone, our job is simply to curate an environment where people can experience the life with God, learn to pray, learn to worship, learn the beauty of the scriptures told as a whole story, where they can experience life together, the embodiment of Jesus here on earth, where we love one another, we live in transparency and authenticity, sacrificial love for one another, to taste and see that God actually offers healing and wholeness. Did you know that your emotional healing from your past has everything to do with the wounds that Jesus bore on the cross? So we love curating that environment. And we love curating the environment of people living on mission. Jesus is busy building his kingdom. We get to join him. So that's enough of me, because we're wanting to do something a little different during this series, and we're wanting you to get to hear from some of our other leaders. And so I'm going to stop, and we'll show you an interview that we did earlier this week. And I'm going to have Gene and Aaron up here with me. I want you to hear from some of our different leaders. And we're just going to interact with this subject of the idea of connecting people to what matters at a time where there's just a lot of questions about what actually matters. And so we want you to hear from them. We were having fun this week, getting ready for this time, joking around about just how different we are. different personalities, backgrounds, but the stuff we're going to talk about is actually the things that we share, and man, it's created the foundation for really special friendships and relationships over the years, and that we share these 4 things in common. We're so different that early on, before Aaron joined our staff, his family knew me, and they thought we would hate each other, but that's certainly not the case. They just thought based on interest and personality, but we have a love for each other because we share these meaningful things, and like C.S. Lewis says, that's where friendship starts. And so I'm glad we can do this together. So I'm interested as we get started, just what's happening personally with each of you and your families, because we've all been through 6 weeks of this now, and there's this mounting stress every week, but there's also extra quiet. And so I'm just wondering, like, what it is that or what is being exposed or revealed right now in terms of your priorities, or the things that matter, or things that don't matter. So just start there.
Yeah, I'll go. I mean, I think, whenever we lose something, it messes with you, right? And we've lost a lot of things in the last several weeks that we rely on, that particularly things that we might rely on for our core identity, right? Like if your identity is in, let's say, in your marriage, and you lose your spouse for some reason, then it's like, who am I now? So, Andrew and I were already wrestling with the loss of our dog, which I know a lot of people can say is just a dog, but for us, we never thought we'd become those people, where your dog is like closer to you than your kids were, but that was the case, and we lost Buddy just right before this thing blew up. So we were trying to figure out, who are we together without Buddy? Mm-hmm. And that's been a challenge. But then you start taking away the ability to leave the home, and it's like, who are we now with Gene in the house all the time, and who am I without being able to go to the places like Moxie's, where I love to, I get energy from socializing. That's why I write my messages mostly there, because I actually draw on that energy. It's where my ideas come in. So it's more challenging to be home. I mean, my biggest choice now is, should I go upstairs or downstairs? Where should I go today?
And you and I were talking this week of how sad it was to be at home away from everyone on Easter.
Yeah.
That was tough.
It was tough. And that actually last weekend was a really tough weekend for me personally. I mean, I really hit the wall on Saturday, mostly because if you recall, here in Colorado, we had a great week. It was really, the weather was nice. I went out running several times, and just enjoyed being able to do that. And all of a sudden this storm hits again, Saturday and Sunday, and it was hard. So, that's been our challenge. I mean, I'd be lying if I said we haven't had a couple bumps. Andrew and I, for just trying to maneuver around each other. It's only 2 of us, but trying to maneuver around each other, and we don't have a big home. But just me personally, how do who am I without Moxie's? Who am I without coming into this building? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the challenge that I've had. And most of it's been pretty good, though, because I still have a lot of things to do in my job, and most of them are really good things. Some of the things we're doing in Justice and Mercy. But yeah, that's what I've been wrestling with.
Yeah. Thanks. Aaron, I know you've had some stuff kind of shaken off and exposed here. So.
Yeah, we've had some conversation with that. I mean, other than realizing how selfish and stubborn that I am, I joked a little while ago, I threw a full-on tantrum a few weeks back of not being able to do some things that I love to do. We were working on a recording project, and that had to come to a halt. And my wife and I having conversations on, agreeing to what it looks like for us with shelter in place and social distancing. And it's no surprise that I'm very opinionated and strong-willed in what I want to do. And along with that, but living in our house, the 4 Wardles are all pretty big personalities, and so navigating that. But one of the things that's been surprising is how, and it goes, Gene, with what you're saying about identity. I think one of the things is, for the last 6 weeks, everything that I do is recorded or on a screen. So even when I'm on a Zoom call, I see myself as well. And so I'm constantly aware of how I sound, what I'm saying, what I look like. And it's like I'm constantly getting this projection back of who I am. And then we record the services and we edit it and look at it again, and you listen to yourself. And it's been this time, and especially realizing how much I feed off of the energy of a full room. And when we're recording worship, there isn't a full room. And so what I've been left with is my personal critique of my performance. And really, it was probably 3-4 weeks, and I started it was impacting me a lot of just high levels of insecurity and having to go, oh, I thought I dealt with putting my identity in my performance and how I do. And I know the things I'm good at and the things I'm not good at, but realizing once again, the Lord using this and the surprise gift of I will use all things for good was the fact that he's saying, I want to go below that. I want when there's a room full of no people and when you have to watch yourself on the screen that you live from a place of your identity in me, not your identity in your performance. And so that's one of the things that is just fascinating, this almost in this time, 6 weeks of a mirror that's being held up. So anything I do, I see it again. And the first reaction is to critique and being like, okay, no, I have to just have a security in who I am in him, continue to try to get better in the things that I'm not, and there's just trust in that. And so that's been a dance.
Yeah, it's painful watching yourself on video.
It really is.
Yeah.
Brian and I were talking after Sunday, and Gene too. You know, I love live. I love the moment. We're together, and then I want to leave that moment. Let's do something else. But when you're sitting there of like, let's gather around and go to church, family, and watch me, I'm having a hard time raising a hand of expectation and a hand of surrender, as I always say. I'm more of like, why do I move like that?
Hey,
why do I do
confession,
that?
I worship with my family in the living room.
Yeah.
But when I come on to speak, I go hide in my office by myself.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Okay, I'll make my confession.
Okay.
So Andrew and I watch from our couch, and when it's me speaking, I'll nudge her and go, this guy's really good.
We need some of your confidence.
Gene's struggle is not the same as mine. I'm like, John Stewart, who does a ton of our production, who's just been amazing. I'm like, John, how can you get that video off there as fast as we can? So it's just exposed that. I mean, it's one of those gifts of in all of it, it seems trivial, but exposing like, oh, I'll put my identity in performance, not in who I am in the Lord, and live from that.
Yeah, and I think just to piggyback on that identity thing, because I think this is helpful. I mean, I learned way back, like 30 years ago in seminary through a class with Neil Anderson, which was really helpful. And he made the statement that if the thing that you identify with, where you get your value and your worth from, if you identify with anything that can be lost or taken away, then that's not the right identity. I mean,
It's a huge gamble.
We all, to some degree, have to do that. Like we get married, we have kids, or we have a job, but all those things can be lost or taken away in some way. So really, the true, valuable, sustainable identity is one where it can't be taken away, and that's where faith comes in, right? No one can take your faith away. You can take your faith away, but no one can take it away from you.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, not putting in anything that you can lose. This one for me it's going kicking and screaming though. It is, getting to that place.
No, we all are. Everybody, all of you, same thing. We're all struggling right now.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. Let's kind of transition to just thinking about how, as a church, we, as I described in the message, kind of curate an environment where people can experience these connections. And we don't want to present it as you do it because God said so. We think they're beautiful things. And so we want to give people the opportunity to connect with God, life with others, healing and mission. So, Gene, I'm interested in your perspective of why you think that's a timely focus for us as a church, because you've been one of our primary leaders the longest, and so you've seen the church evolve. Have you seen the church evolved in a culture that's changing? So, just some of your thoughts about connecting to meaningful things and why that's important right now.
Yeah, I never thought I'd ever be the sage person people would go to. I mean, I'm going on 38 years now of following Rabbi Jesus, and I'm thinking, wow, 38 years.
We were going to sit at your feet. They said the camera shot would be.
Yeah, it wouldn't work with the camera.
I wanted to elaborate a little bit more. I know in your message you're talking about a growth paradigm, but I want to elaborate a little bit more because there really is a strong correlation between the seasons of our physical growth cycle and the seasons of our spiritual growth cycle. They're almost identical. Like, we're born into infancy, and it's like, whoa, what just happened, right? It was really dark, and now it's really light. I kind of like that. I'm just going to bask in that. But, what is all this stuff that's going on? And that's kind of what it's like to be born again. It was for me, and I think for a lot of people, if you're not raised in the church particularly, and you have this event where you were walking in darkness and now you're in light, it really does feel like a new birth. But then you get into childhood, and in that childhood time, it's like you're just exploring. Everything's fresh, and you just can't get enough of everything. You got all this energy, and you're moving around a lot. That's how your spiritual life is. Then you move into adolescence, and it's a time where you just start questioning everything, and there's a lot of drama in your life. And you think about that. I mean, I had that season where I said really stupid things because I thought I knew I had all the answers. I think you referred to it as that black and white phase. But then you get into this young adult years, and you begin to get settled. Maybe you go through college, you get married, you have some kids, you get a home, and you're just going for kind of the long run now. But then you get to your midlife, and now you're wondering, did I make the right choices? Did I invest my life in the right things? And that's where you get into this kind of deconstruction kind of mode, not just with other parts of life, but particularly with your faith. But then you eventually get to your senior years, like I'm in right now, and you're not shaken as much. You've been through enough things. You're not holding so tightly on to things that aren't essential anymore. You're not black and white. You have a lot more grace. You have a lot more patience. You have a lot more wisdom to give. And I think that's just normal. We all go through that. But then God, during those times, God throws things into your life, like in my situation, Andrew's situation. About 3 years into following Jesus, our daughter had a mental health challenge that took her out of life for years, really. I mean, she's doing great now. She's really doing fantastic, but it rocked our world. I mean, it really challenged us. It raised all kinds of questions for us theologically, particularly like, where's God and what's he doing? And here we are investing our life serving you, God, and this is what you give us. That stuff's all normal. And it's there because God uses these things to push us down the road in our growth. Like, he's got a plan for us. And these things come into our life. This particular situation right now with the coronavirus is a unique opportunity because we're all facing it at the same time. We're all going through this at the same time. We all have the same kinds of losses, some more severe than others, financial insecurity, job insecurity, even just trying to get some food on the table, kinds of things. And so it's more of an opportunity that God uses. He pushes these things into our life, as we shared in our own personal challenges, to say, what are the things that you are placing your value in?
And it's a tremendous opportunity right now. We were talking church attendance right now is up 300% since churches were shut down.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people like refocusing on Jesus or trying to stay focused or focusing on him for the first time. So we're kind of all looking for some kind of direction.
This is it, and I think it all boils down to what I think the unique opportunity is. It's like that passage in Revelation where, I forget which church it is, but they've lost their first love. So go back to your first love. Go do those things that you did at the beginning. This is a time for us to say, what's important, what really does matter here. And for us at Cornerstone, the primary thing that matters is keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus as the author and perfecter of our faith. And that's why I think this is unique. We're all doing it together. We have to all figure out how to be the church without a building, how to be the church without organized events. And that relies on each of us to do what God has called us to do without organization, without a church building. And I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. Thank you. Aaron, you're always really good at just noticing what's happening in culture. And I'm interested what you see kind of the challenges for us as a church connecting people to meaningful things in the context of the world today, 2020. And not just because of the virus, but even what was happening beforehand.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we look at, and I mean, all of this is from, the cheap seats from my perspective, but see, the avalanche of options has overwhelmed people. It's just so many different things they could tune into, look at, and the question comes, what's important, what matters? And I think one of the things is looking at that, and then you come to a time where this COVID-19 and the world kind of comes to a midst of a halt and a pause. That avalanche is kind of stopped, and people are kind of sifting through to go, what do I really want my life to be involved with? Now, I don't know about others, but it was like the first 3 weeks was just trying to figure out this, what this is. But in looking at that, I think that there are some things that begin to float to the top. And one of the things that we're hearing from our people, but also is kind of a return to localization. And I don't mean that just our neighborhoods, but we want what's ours. Like you've mentioned that, I'm humbled and amazed that people are tuning into our services when there are amazing services from churches that are incredible and their production and all that. And they could simply tune in there, but people are like, no, that's my church. Or people, I think we've seen this being in the, microbrew capital, that people want to go to their brewery. They want to go to their restaurant. But I think one of the things that will begin to happen is what matters is it's localized to this is mine. This is in my environment. I know these people, and I want to support that. I think that's one of the things that we'll see. We have seen what moves through the avalanche of all the options to what really matters. It's somewhat of a localization to see, well, I'm connected to this. This matters to me. We're integrated. The next thing that I think is watching, in a variety of different venues, and we've made the decision to continue to have services here at the church because we wanted that. That's my church. But another thing is just people are wanting real. And I think that's what I want. I want it to be real. Do a great job, have great production quality, but I want it to be real. This thing that is authentic, that is, not sloppy, but has a degree of the humanity in it. And I think that's beginning to elevate. That in the past, that which is polished and perfected, well, that rose to the top. Well, now, that's not as value. I want substance. I want something real. And then the last thing is, I think, that I'm seeing is people want something, and I want something. I guess I'll just confess this for me, is it has to be bigger than myself. I want to be attached to the purpose. And, I want to be sensitive, too, that, every person is suffering and going through this at different levels. But there comes this place, and my daughter and I were having this conversation, and like I said before, I can be navel-gazing. I'm like, what's this about me? How do I look? How do I sound? And one of the cures for that isn't necessarily perfecting my craft, but it's going, I got to live for something bigger. I got to live for somebody else. And so I think that on the other side of this, we're having the opportunity to go, as an avalanche comes down, we're seeing a snow melt. And there's things that are rock solid. They're still going to be there, and that is community, localized communities that care for each other. Another things, events, whatever it may be that is real. I think we're going to see a rise of this experiment of virtual everything is showing it's not enough. There are some things that can't translate in virtual presence. It has to be. I mean, just being around each other, there was this, we've had Zoom calls and, but just being in the presence of each other, it's really different. It breaks into those four things, as that we're talking about: life with God, life together, life of wholeness, and life on mission. But each one of those falls into a localization, something that's real, and finally something that's bigger than ourselves. I see it in music, the stuff that, you know, no one really wants, like the stuff that's coming out. It's a lot of people, great artists that we love. They're doing a live stream just on a guitar, and you're going, that's real. And that's my musician. Maybe not the most famous person, but I love, you know, Griffin House or Drew Holcomb or these guys that I really connect with. And so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I agree. I think this is creating opportunity. It's creating that hunger we talked about. And, you know, the church offers unique things. And it's opportunity for us to be the church and then to bring that back into this place when we're together again. It's only going to just make us stronger. So,
Yeah.
So thank you guys. I love you guys. I'm glad we can be together. It is fun to be in the same room.
Yeah, it is.
6 feet apart, of
6
course.
feet.
Everyone, yeah.
Measured.
But, yeah. But I'm going to close our time. I'm going to pray for us and invite you to pray with us from home. And so let's just go to the quiet place of prayer. If you've never prayed before, the Lord listens and he can speak to you. And so we just we bow our heads, we close our eyes to just drown out distractions. And then I just want to pray for us and bless us. And so, Father, I thank you for just this idea that you invite us into a meaningful life. We thank you that you invite us into more. You invite us into meaning. You connect us to the things in life that really matter. I pray for every one of us and those listening at home that we might take that next step with you, whether it's nurturing more and more a life of God with you and learning to pray, or connecting in Christian community where we're able to be authentic and love one another and support each other, or whether it's pursuing healing from some of those past wounds or mission, whatever it is, God. There's so much for us. I just bless every person with that next step. And I pray for our church. I pray that our church would be a place that is an open door and that we are always extending this invitation to all of those beautiful things that you've given us and that you've always said matter. And as people taste it, Lord, and we kind of curate that environment, we're confident, God, that you can deliver on the things that we can't. That you can prove where we can't, you can reveal where we can't. And so we thank you that you're a living God that does that. And I just bless Cornerstone with that reality today, that they would see you in their life working for them. And we love you and thank you for this time. In Jesus' name, amen.
Says to me, come up here so you can see what's happening. Tiptoe across the sea of glass as the thunder roll, the lightning crash around the throne. And I'm invited in. I'm invited in. Colors dance and living creatures chant, relentless praise to the Lamb who was slain. Well, angels sing and elders bow, and you can hear the crowns hit the ground and make a scene. I'm invited in. 'Cause I'm invited in. Well, I'm invited in. I'm invited in. And a roar of Messiah. As we close this time together, I pray that as you catch a glimpse and you encounter the presence, the truth, the power, the mystery, the love of God, that you will realize what really matters.
It is so good to worship together. Thank you, Brian, for that call and reminder to connect to what matters. Speaking of connecting, we are posting regularly on our website inspiring tools and resources to help you stay connected. This week, we've even launched Some Good News, which is a way that we can tell stories of what is happening in our community and through the Cornerstone community of sharing God's love and provision with people. Another way to stay in touch is through our social media platforms, Facebook and Instagram, where we are posting regular daily content to help you stay connected, to help you know of ways that you can help, and help you know how you can even connect with us if you need help. If you have questions about faith or the gospel, one of our pastors would love to talk with you. Please go to our Church Online website and click on the button, I could use help, and there will be a form to fill out and somebody will be in touch with you. If you are new or would like to connect or even just say hi, I'd like to invite you to join Brian Carlucci and I in the virtual lobby at 10:30. The link for the Zoom call is on the virtual lobby button on our website. We hope to see you there. As always, thanks for being with us today, and together let's continue to connect to what matters.